Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jennifer Hugo. I am the managing director here at Corvirtus, and I am joined with my fantastic colleague, Sam Lawson. He's a talent management specialist that has been with us for virtually almost exactly 2 years now. So we thought it might be fun just to share a little bit more about ourselves through these videos and through our what we're sharing with you. And today we're going to talk about Sam's journey in IO psychology, which if you're watching and you're not familiar with IO Psych yet, that stands for Industrial Organizational Psychology. So Sam, just to get started, maybe you could share a little bit about what got you engaged in IO psychology initially.
Yeah, sure. I went to undergrad at Ball State University, which is in Muncie, Indiana, and actually just a couple hours from where Jen went to undergrad at Purdue. So we do have that Indiana connection, which is pretty cool. So I got to Ball State in 2012. My hair was a lot shorter than it is now when I arrived, but I knew that I wanted to go into something relevant to the field of psychology. At the time, I didn't exactly know what that was. And so like most incoming students who major in psychology, I took intro to psych my second semester of my freshman year. And I was lucky enough where the instructor for my course actually had a background in IO as well as a little bit of applied social psychology. And so I was fortunate enough to learn about IO psychology a lot earlier than some other people have been able to learn about it. Oftentimes, connecting with students in graduate school or even during undergrad, many students who go into the field of IO typically don't learn about it until maybe sophomore or junior year. So I was lucky to learn about it early on, and then we actually spent several class periods discussing the various topics of industrial organizational psychology. And so that's really what got me into it, just learning about the different facets of the field and the different employment opportunities and just how it was much less traditional than how we typically, maybe the common lay person thinks about psychology in terms of clinical or cognition or even meddling into psychiatry a little bit as well.
So what initially caught your interest when you first started learning about it? What really made you want to keep moving forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I was mostly interested in just the concept of being able to apply concepts relevant to psychology, to motivation, to the workplace. So just opportunities in any way possible to help organizations identify and select quality individuals to fill positions, but then also opportunities to learn more about what motivates employees and then what can we do as both psychologists and practitioners in the field to really enhance satisfaction in the workplace as well as levels of trust, engagement, and commitment. And so that's something that really resonated with me at the time and still continues to do so.
Fantastic. So once you started learning, once you had those classes, what did you do after that?
Yeah, great question. So I was fortunate enough to learn about it early on. I was also fortunate enough to take an intro to IO course in undergrad, and we even offered an advanced IO course, which focused on much of the same topics, but dove into the research and the theory much more extensively with things around like competency modeling, job analysis, so on and so forth. And then with those classes and some of that knowledge under my belt, I was actually able to be a part of a couple of different research labs on campus. And so I spent most of my time, my junior and senior year, between the two buildings that are pictured here. And so one of the professors in the psychology department also, just similar to my intro psych teacher, he had just received his PhD in IO. And so this was his first job out of school. And so I was able to build a really strong connection with him. He actually helped me a lot with my graduate school application process when it came time to do that. So that was incredibly helpful. But what was also helpful in really building up my resume and applying to different programs, I was able, like I said, to be a part of a couple of different research labs, which focused on pay secrecy and pay transparency. And so I was able to not only help him with his literature review research, but also actually helped him with running some of the different studies that he was running at the time between the two buildings. So I don't want to dive too much into the details because that would be a whole other conversation in itself. But the gist of it is that we were looking at how transparent organizations are with pay, as well as how vague versus how specific organizations are with performance feedback, how those collectively influence whether we're more likely to negotiate for a higher salary when it comes time to do so. So it was definitely a really good experience, and to just have that opportunity to do that before moving on.
Mm-hmm. What were your biggest concerns or fears at this point as you were wrapping up your undergrad experience?
Probably similar to a lot of people, just a fear of not getting in the first time around, or maybe even more so not getting into like my plan A school or my top choice, and then having to resort to something that, yes, I would still be excited about, but maybe not to the extent that I would have been otherwise. And luckily, as I'll get to in a minute, I luckily was able to get into my top program. And so, but that was the main concern at the time, is just making sure that I had the credentials and the knowledge and the experience that was essential to get into a school, as well as, the right level of GRE scores, just so many different qualifiers to me, and just making sure that I was on top of all of those.
Yeah, I think that is the scary thing at that time, is balancing all the stuff you have going on, all your classes, plus all the things you want to do with IO Psych, with being in labs or doing a thesis, and then also GREs, and the whole application process on top of that is really daunting.
Yeah, definitely.
It sounds like that mentorship that you had and the research experience was really a sound foundation. I think that was for me too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was certainly fortunate to have that resource and that person, especially who was fresh out of that type of grad school environment, to just bounce ideas off of and have.
I had someone who was new as well, and that was helpful. I think that they're a little bit less separated and still really remember and have that connection to when they were in that place. So yeah, I totally agree.
Certainly.
All right. So where did you end up, Sam?
So I transitioned from Indiana, where I had lived my entire life up to that point, and then made the transition to Minnesota for a couple of years. And so my expectation going in, so first of all, I attended Minnesota State in Mankato, Minnesota. And so geographically, I didn't know where that was at the time. I just knew that I really wanted to go there because of the credibility of the program and just the opportunities it would provide. And so my expectation was, I had this stereotype of Minnesota being, the northern part of Minnesota with pine trees and expansive lakes and nature. So that was my expectation going in, until I realized that it was actually in the southern part of the state. And so basically what happened is I transitioned from living in a climate that had a lot of corn to another climate that also had a lot of corn plus a lot more snow as well. So that part was a little disappointing, but the rest of my experience, aside from the geography, was fantastic.
Mm-hmm. And really, for graduate school, there's so much else going on. The environment doesn't matter too much. It more matters what experiences you're going to have.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point. That was kind of a running joke in our program, is that there wasn't necessarily a lot to do in Mankato, and so it made it much easier to focus on.
We had that same joke at Bowling Green.
Yeah. So this is where I ended up, Minnesota State University in Mankato. If you recall a picture from a few slides ago, I also basically went from a university that had a clock tower to another university that also had a clock tower in the center of campus.
But much more modern.
Exactly. So some things changed, some things didn't. But the ultimate reason that I ended up at Mankato and why that was my top choice is because of the applied experiences that they offered, which is actually what that logo on the bottom right is, the OERG. Commonly referred to as the Organizational Effectiveness Research Group. And so what that was an opportunity for students in the program like myself to work as associate consultants during our time in the program. And so the faculty served as the primary consultants, and then we served as the associates or otherwise project managers for the different projects we had going on at any given time. So not only did I have the opportunity to really build up my knowledge and expertise in the various areas of IO, like employee selection, organizational development, a couple of statistics classes, but I also had opportunities to apply that knowledge directly to projects working with clients at the time. So doing work from things like conducting job analyses to leading employee engagement surveys for clients. So that was a really tremendous opportunity to be able to very quickly take what I was learning in class and then apply it to a real world setting rather than just constantly talking about it in theory. So that was the ultimate reason why I chose the program, was for those applied experiences.
Yeah, that sounds incredibly phenomenal. What were some of the high points of your graduate career, whether that be projects or different things that you got to be involved in?
Yeah, that's a great question. We got to take a lot of cool trips. We had a client that we were working with out in Santa Monica, the Los Angeles area. We were working with them on a project for developing structured interview guides. And so myself and then the small group that I was working with actually got to travel out to Los Angeles for a few days to meet with the client in person, tour their facilities, their workplace, and then deliver a presentation to their stakeholders regarding the structured interview project that we were working on for them. So that was a really cool opportunity. But then we also just got to do a lot of fun traveling as well. So like our program takes an international trip every other summer. And so I was actually in between my first and second year, I was able to take a trip over to Ireland for a couple of weeks. So that was a lot of fun as well, to kind of take a break from the academic stuff. So
that's incredible. It sounds like just the perfect master's experience. So as you wound down your graduate career, what were you thinking about with launching your first job?
Yeah, that's something that I did struggle with initially, and then I think I realized, the great thing about that graduate program at Mankato, and really any of them, is that because you're taking all those different types of classes, like on job analysis, selection, org development, it really helps you narrow your focus and your interests about what you might want to pursue as a full-time career, full-time opportunity. And so the more I went through the classes, I realized that a huge calling for me was more on the I side of the field. So really focusing on testing and assessment and selection, but then a little bit of like job analysis and competency modeling sprinkled in as well. And so just taking all those different types of classes really helped me to narrow down my interests, and ultimately drove me to pursue a job somewhere on the I side with selection, which Corvirtus was certainly able to offer that opportunity for me. So,
and we're so glad to have you as part of our team.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So as you've launched, you've been incredibly productive. You manage a lot of organizations now here at Corvirtus. What are some of the surprises and things that you didn't know about as you were wrapping up graduate school and in these first 2 years?
Yeah, so the first was just the size of the IO community. On paper, it seems pretty small, but it really is crazy how everyone kind of seems to know each other in the field through one person or another. And so that was an initial surprise to me, especially going through graduate school. But then also, like I mentioned, just the different employment paths and opportunities that are available to take. So I know just off the top of my head, whether you're going into internal consulting or more so what Jen and I do, which is on the external side of things, it really is incredible, all of the different opportunities that you have for career paths as well as growth and advancement. So I know, like off the top of my head, people from my graduating class are working in the military, in healthcare. A few others are working in external consulting, but just working in all types of different industries and even government. There's just so many options for us in terms of employment. Another surprise, which I was able to kind of get a grasp on pretty quickly, which was lucky, was just the degree of ambiguity that comes with the different types of projects that we work on within our field or for clients. So I like to think of it as companies basically pay us to do their homework for them. And so they may come to us with a problem around turnover or retention. And, if they knew the answer, then they would handle it themselves. Since they don't, they come to us, but there's always a degree of ambiguity involved in every deliverable or project. And it's really important to be able to effectively communicate with the client around what their expectations are, and then how you can most efficiently and effectively address those. And that kind of leads into the trust and autonomy piece, which is just not only both in graduate school and then in my role at Corvirtus, just the level of trust and autonomy that I am provided with in order to perform my job responsibilities. That was a surprise to me initially, but it's that really goes a long way to just boosting my confidence and motivation to really perform the tasks that I need to do on a day-to-day basis in a successful manner. So that was more so a really nice surprise. And then lastly, I would say I think there's always this ongoing confusion from a conceptual standpoint between how IO and human resources differ from one another. So I know I've been doing a lot of talking, but Jen, I don't know if you have any ideas on that or if you want to jump in, and you're more than welcome to do so.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think we could have a whole nother discussion on that, but
Yeah.
HR is really how we make a big part of how we make a difference. We partner with leaders across the organization, but we definitely partner with HR very closely. So we just building that relationship with the field and how we are distinct with our focus on science and building out tools and making HR successful. So it is an interesting relationship. And I think that as the industrial organizational psychology field, as we keep growing and are recognized as key partners to have all the key outcomes that we're looking at right now, whether that be business results, sales, reducing turnover. We talked about work stress and work-life integration recently. So we're really key with building out the tools that can help HR scale what they want to achieve. So it is definitely, I think it gets to communication, which I know you've done so much for with data visualization and putting together reports, how we communicate to people who may not understand what we do.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a really great way of putting it. And there certainly is a lot of overlap between IO and HR, but they certainly are distinct fields. I think another really good way of looking at it as well is it feels like we provide a lot of the science and data-driven evidence and theory into the solutions that HR uses on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a performance management system or pre-employment assessments. So there is a lot of collaboration between us and the HR folks. And so I think that's important to emphasize as well, that it's not two fields clashing against each other. There is a lot of overlap and collaboration.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. We're partners.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Sam, what have been some of the challenges? I think that kind of highlights a potential challenge. What are some of the other challenges that you've dealt with?
Yeah, that's a great question. Imposter syndrome was a big one initially. I think that started a little bit in graduate school and then slowly phased out as I moved through my first year. And then it came back again once I started at Corvirtus. And I know that that's just kind of a natural thing that a lot of, especially first-time employees in the workplace go through. Obviously you have the knowledge, the skills, the credentials to be successful, to really own your performance and the work that you're doing. But there is still that little voice in the back of your head that's kind of trying to talk you down a little bit, saying, should I really be here? Do I really deserve this? Do I really know what I'm talking about? And so that's just something that naturally goes away with time. And so not so much of a challenge now, but certainly was initially. I think what we just talked about with the overlap between IO and HR, that brings up those last 2 points, or really the three that I haven't mentioned here. Just that we have a very unique and privileged opportunity to educate HR practitioners on the benefits of the different solutions and systems that we in the IO community are able to provide and develop. Like I said, whether that's hiring assessments or solutions around employee engagement, reducing turnover, increasing retention, and then really being able to tailor your communication and approach to fit the individual and or the situation. So like Jen mentioned, I work with a variety of clients at Corvirtus. Each has their own personality type and their own expectations. And so it becomes really important for me, and I know, Jen, you can certainly speak on this as well, to really adapt the way that you approach different situations depending upon the individual that you're dealing with. Some people that I work with client-wise are much more open and expressive and happy-go-lucky. Others are a bit more, can be a bit more stern
Results focused, yeah. Get to the point sort of thing.
Focused. And so just really knowing how to navigate those situations and adapt your approach and your communication style to fit their needs and really understand what their expectations are. That can certainly be challenging, but just especially when you're forming those new relationships with clients, having those conversations up front to really clear up any potential confusion is really helpful. And that's all of that is just something that comes with working on the external consulting side of things as opposed to internal.
Yeah, those are great points. I mean, each client is an opportunity and they have their own goals and results. And so how we work with them to achieve those differs depending on what we're doing and the nature of their industry and what they've experienced and the problems that they're trying to overcome.
Yeah, certainly. That's a really great point.
Anything else, Sam? Any advice that you'd have for people who maybe are considering a career in industrial organizational psychology or just want to learn more about it? Maybe they're one of our clients that are partnering with us. Just any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I would welcome anyone to reach out to Jen or myself if they have questions. There are also plenty of resources online. For example, there's the Society for Industrial Organizational Psychology, or what we commonly refer to as SIOP, SIOP.org. They have a really great website with lots of different resources about the field, latest trends, latest research that's going on. But even just doing a quick internet search to learn more about the field and the different facets that it provides, that can really help help you determine if you are interested in the field, whether it might be a good fit for your needs and what you're looking for as a career opportunity.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sam. This was excellent. You're such a key, integral part of what we do, and you've moved the needle on so many things on how we take care of our clients and how we build our business and spread the good news about IO Psych. So thank you for taking the time and being my partner on these things. I so appreciate all that you do. And thank you to everyone who is listening to this video. I hope you found it useful. If you liked it, please feel free to subscribe to us on YouTube and like this video. And we look forward to talking again sometime soon.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.